The NFL draft may be 1 week away, but the Cleveland Browns are still busy in free agency. We'll talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dawgpound, LGB, and ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps growing, and I appreciate you all so much. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel and join in the fun. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cleveland Browns made a move today, 1 week before the NFL draft, signing veteran offensive lineman Germain Ifedi, former first-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks in 2016. In his career, Germain has made 59 career starts at right tackle. He has also made 24 career starts at right guard for a total of 83 NFL starts. He is now in his ninth season, as I said, out of Texas A&M. First thought about this was there any crossover? Andy Carlson, Germain Ifedi no, there was no crossover between Ifedi and new offensive line coach Andy Dickerson. So there was no connection there where basically Dickerson was, basically bringing in somebody that he had a relationship with. Their time did not coincide together in Seattle. My first thought here, Ifedi comes in and can play tackle and obviously has a ton of experience at guard. This would be something that would probably be beneficial. And look, I'm not guaranteeing Germain Ifedi a roster spot right now, but you look at the way the Browns roster is. Now, look, who's a reserve, who's not a reserve at the offensive line position. Most likely, Jedrick Wills is your starting left tackle. Means DeJuan Jones or Jack Conklin are your starting right tackle and your reserve right tackle. Neither one. Maybe DeJuan Jones works on it in the summer, but to this point, DeJuan Jones is strictly a right tackle. Jack Conklin is strictly a right tackle. So that means one of your reserves is position dependent. Now, you go to your reserve center, Luke Whippler. He is center specific. Michael Dunn can play left guard. Michael Dunn can play right guard, but guard specific to the position. Ifedi now comes in, and here's a guy that can play inside and out. James Hudson has experience at both tackle positions, but this may be one, and the path for Germain Ifedi to make this team, to make this 53, could be that he is the fourth guard, fourth or fifth offensive tackle. That becomes a pretty good, valuable thing that Germain Ifedi has starting experience on the inside and starting experience on the outside, because most of the reserves for the Cleveland Browns on the offensive line, even if they have a little bit of playing time, it is position dependent. They have not been, somebody that's been inside, somebody been outside. So certainly, in my opinion, a good move. A lot of this does also have to do, you brought in the other Ademije, the other offensive tackle. We're hearing positive things about the Browns' offensive tackles and their rehab, and obviously all of them coming off of injuries. We're not really sure when any of them are going to do anything. As far as OTAs, whatever they want to call these things nowadays. I don't believe any of these Browns guys are probably going to do anything. So there is the theory of you need some bodies out there to at least mimic what is going to be something close to real football as you go through these team activities. So Ifedi obviously can come in and he can do some things. And obviously if you need him to play at guard at a pinch or line up at tackle, he can do both of those things. You still have Hudson to do these things with, and obviously Ademije as well. Ifedi, was, again, a former Seattle Seahawk. I spent 4 years in Seattle. He's bounced around since. He was with the Bills up until late in the regular season, I think December 28th. They released him. They did stash him away on the practice squad. There was no thought or no conviction as far as bringing Germain Ifedi back long term. Wasn't offered a futures contract. But you have a guy here who's, got plenty of experience, former first round pick, but turned 30 years old in June. And we know the drill to Cleveland Browns, unemployed, former first round pick. That is kind of, basically, we know Andrew Berry, we know the Browns, they've got it tight, Hey, my girl's got a friend, she's former first round. Oh, really? Does she? It's something the Browns look for. Obviously, it's somebody that's had all the talent, somebody that had all the athletic ability. And, here they are. We've seen it a million times where guys have, found their way to the Cleveland Browns, later part of their careers as former first round picks. So I like the signing. I really do. I think it's an interesting one. Whether or not this is going to stop the Cleveland Browns from drafting an offensive tackle, which is a very heavy offensive tackle class. Don't see it. Don't think it's going to happen for a second. There's still players like Roger Rosengarter. There are still players like Blake Fisher. There are still players like Kieran Amedeji. Sorry, I'm going to I can guarantee you he will get drafted by the Cleveland Browns, the Yale tackle, because it's going to take me about 6 weeks to get the kid's name right. Kieran Amedeji. There you go. So the Browns, I don't think it's going to change anything. Now, there are a lot of people that think, and remember, if we did this with Pete Smith the other night, Pete really thought the Browns were going to take a wide receiver. He thought the Browns were going to take an offensive tackle. He thought the Browns were going to take an offensive guard. And if you remember, Pete threw in a little dialogue about, the messages I had sent back and forth. And, with only 6 picks in a draft, and you say, oh, well, yeah, I definitely think they're going to draft an offensive guard. Gross. It's just not very sexy. Of course, until we see who the player is, and then of course that can change everything. That's the way it goes. I'm allowed to fan out in this job, just like any of you are like to, able to fan out. Just not a very sexy pick drafting an offensive guard. But it does make you wonder, because Dawson Dietrich here, obviously, as well, if you remember, drafted a couple of years ago, late on day 3. He's a guy that obviously has inside versatility, was drafted as a center, had some guard experience, probably will remain on the guard path as far as the reserve offensive lines for the spring of this summer. Luke Whippler is probably the guy they are grooming to be the next center for the Cleveland Browns. So for me, it's just, if you say maybe guard comes off the list, okay. And especially now that we hear, that, Joe Milton is maybe being mentioned, Tennessee quarterback, as maybe being a tight end convert. Browns have had interest. Browns had Joe Milton into Berea. And now all of a sudden we're hearing that Joe Milton may be somebody that is, moving the tight end. Could the Cleveland Browns be one of those teams that are interested in that? Very interesting. But this could open up the possibility to draft a corner. This could open up a possibility to draft another position. Again, we don't know how many picks the Browns have. We can only base our guesses on what we know from the past and the amount of picks they currently have. They currently have 6. They usually make around, 6 selections. I don't think they're going to make them all, I'm going to be honest. But, just your news of the day. Browns signed veteran offensive lineman, offensive tackle, has a lot of guard experience as well. Germain Ifedi, former first-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks. He will be 30 in June, and now he is a Cleveland Brown. We're going to continue on your latest Locked On Browns. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. We're going to talk about how deep the offensive line is right now and how much room there potentially is for a rookie. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find a quality professional that is right for the role you need to be filled. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Everything is in there. Education, of course, special skills, all those things. So if you were looking for somebody to be the difference for your company, that's why LinkedIn is important. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and, of course, quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. your latest Locked On Browns continues. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd, and we appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcast. The Everyday Crowd keeps growing. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Do not miss an episode. I appreciate you all for coming out. Obviously 1 week away from the NFL draft. Starting to get excited. It always feels like it's so long away. But then you look and, basically that just said, all right, baseball season's here. We're close. Now, all of a sudden, now you're talking about teams and you see records where teams have almost played 20 games. So you know what that means? It means it's NFL draft time and we are knocking on that door. Your Browns' big news of the day. Germain Ifedi, former first-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks, reserve offensive lineman, has played some guard, has been signed to the Cleveland Browns for the 2024 season. Now, I look at the Browns' offensive line room, the way it is currently constructed. And, there's so much talk about the Browns' activity in bringing in new, young, rookie offensive line as Andy Dickerson starts to turn this room over, kind of put his stamp on it, make the room his own, trying to figure how many guys are on the roster and what the Browns usually roster at the offensive line position. So, Jedrick Wills on the roster, obviously Joe Bitonio on the roster, obviously Posick on the roster, Wyatt Teller, and then you have Jack Conklin, you have DeJuan Jones. Let's put you at 6 right there. Michael Dunn, money he was paid, over $1 million guaranteed on that contract for this year. Michael Dunn is your 7th offensive lineman. So we're 7. We are 7 right there, okay? Then you're going to have to carry a backup center. Luke Whippler certainly did not get an opportunity to play a lot last year, but you look and you need a backup center. So right there, Luke Whippler becomes your 8th offensive lineman. So now trying to look at what's left on the roster, Dawson Deaton, like I spoke about, Hakeem Adeniji, James Hudson. Huddy's been here for a long time. And, James Hudson's probably played a lot more football than I think a lot of people actually realize. The only problem is he is tackle dependent, which could give him an opportunity, certainly, to be offensive tackle 4 or offensive tackle 5. There's no question about it. As far as the rest of it, I'm not really sure, nor do I believe that, what goes on, Dawson Deaton. Germain Ifedi could just become your 9th guy right there. So therefore, you have a guy that can certainly obviously play right tackle for you. James Hudson can play left tackle for you. You have Conklin. You have, of course, you have Conklin, and of course, you have Jedrick Wills over. So that gives you 4.5 tackles. So if you want to say you want to keep 9, so you can say you have 4 tackles between, of course, on the left side, Jedrick Wills, then Jones, and then of course Conklin. And if you say you kept Huddy, that's 4. Ifedi becomes your 4.5 offensive tackle. He also makes it 3.5 at the guard position. So that puts you to 8 guys. And then Luke Whippler puts you to 9. So, do I think this is going to change the fact that the Browns are interested in this offensive tackle class? No. You don't hire a new offensive line coach and not give him a chance to opportunity, show himself, show his wares, develop talent. So you look at this class, and again, I've told you about how deep this offensive tackle class is. We've given you plenty of names that I think Browns should be interested in. And, you're going to give him the opportunity to start working on the offensive line of 2025, 2026. And it looks like tackle position could be the one, and obviously the biggest area of need. As we know, Jedrick Wills' contract will be set to expire. You have 2 more years beyond 2024 with DeJuan Jones. Jack Conklin, it will all be about his play in 2024 to determine whether or not Jack Conklin is even a possibility for being a Cleveland Brown in 2025. But you could end up in a position where you have 1 offensive tackle for 2025. So it doesn't change the fact that I think the Browns are going to be interested. Doesn't change the fact that, they're looking for the future here as well. Of course, they want to have a phenomenal offensive tackle room this year. But if they do that, that means Jedrick Wills is going to leave and get really big money from somewhere else. If it does, God bless him. Jack Conklin, it's all going to be about health. It's all going to be about whether or not he can stay on the field. It's all going to be about whether or not he looks like the Jack Conklin that was once an All-Pro for the Tennessee Titans, and the Jack Conklin that was once an All-Pro for the Cleveland Browns. Those are things that you're looking at. Those are things that you need to see. And it's been tough for Jack. Jack's had injuries in Tennessee, Jack certainly had a share of injuries here with Cleveland. And even when Jack's not out injured or Jack's dinged up. And I remember, I had this conversation for years with a buddy of mine, Steve Morton, big Tennessee Titans guy. And, when Jack Conklin is 100% healthy, he is one of the greatest tackles in the game. But the problem is Jack Conklin is a really athletic right tackle. So when he gets dinged up and he is starting to lose a little bit of that athleticism, all of a sudden his level of play drops. I want to see it, for a Jack. I want to see a strong season for Jack. It's, he's just one of those guys that you just figured out kind of has the black cloud that just follows him around everywhere he goes. The guy's just got, he's just got absolute terrible luck. Things just don't ever seem to go his way as far as the injuries, go. But, Jack Conklin, it was a very precise signing by the Browns. Now, if you remember when free agency started in 2020, Andrew Berry got right out the gate. And the first two guys signed were Austin Hooper and, of course, Jack Conklin. And, they were hoping they were setting some foundations. Austin Hooper probably never really panned out like they were hoping. It's whatever. You shoot your shot, you see what happens. And part of the reason they signed is, remember, they weren't sure on David Njoku. And David Njoku, who they ended up committing to, turned in obviously this big-time phenomenal tight end in the NFL. And Jack Conklin, when available, has been a really, really strong right tackle for this team. I don't think the move today for Germain Ifedi changes anything. Again, for me, I think the Browns are probably going to be maybe out on drafting a guard. I'm not saying they're not going to have some interest. I'm not looking to say they might do it, late on day 3. But of the priority picks the Browns have, which in my opinion are 54 and 85, you can take guard off that list. And look, I was never there anyway. I think there's positions, and we know what they are, and I will talk about them in segment 3, where I think can be bountiful and beneficial for the Cleveland Browns here in the 2024 draft. Don't have a ton of picks. You got 8 picks next year. You start to get back to normalcy. Last small draft for the Cleveland Browns. We'll see how Andrew Berry handles this one. We are going to continue because we're talking about these prize picks at 54 and 85. Maybe everybody doesn't think they're prize picks, but they're the best picks the Browns have. So that's the way I'm going to sell them, as the prize picks for the Browns. But starting to look at, what if you drafted 54 and 85? Is there going to be a potential for these guys to play? What position would they have to play to see the field for the Browns in 2024? Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game. Pull off some bank heist and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most richest and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there and put on your game face and download Monopoly Go. Now free on the App Store or Google Play. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Of course, I appreciate all of you for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd is a bunch of filthy animals, but they're my filthy animals. So join the filthy animals. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcast. Big news, maybe not. Your Cleveland Browns news of the day. 1 week before the 2024 NFL Draft, the Browns have agreed to terms with veteran offensive lineman Germain Ifedi, originally first-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks, will turn 30 in June. Germain has 84 games of NFL starting experience, over almost 60 games as a right tackle, over 20 games as a right guard. So the Browns get a versatile piece with tons of playing experience. And again, Browns need guys to do these activities, these organized practices here. And the Browns are also maybe going to need, some guys to fill in. I don't think it's going to be a full throttle training camp for Jedrick Wills. I don't think it's going to be a full throttle training camp for Jack Conklin. I don't think it's going to be a full throttle training camp for DeJuan Jones. So they're going to need bodies. They're going to need to go out there and, obviously help this team practice, work, and get themselves ready for the 2024 season. Germain Ifedi could be a guy that makes this Cleveland Browns roster for 2024. Germain Ifedi could be a guy that plays really well. And late in the summer, somebody has an injury, needs a veteran right tackle, needs a veteran right guard, and who knows? Maybe the Browns can spend a 4-month dalliance with Germain Ifedi and turn him into a possible draft pick. Again, Andrew Berry, their resources. Do we use the resource to bring in someone? Do you use the resource to acquire someone? There are a million avenues to go with the way the Cleveland Browns handle these things. Now, I was talking and leading up to this, of course. Now, looking at 54 and 85, which to me are, the Browns have a chance to get some pretty good assets here. Now, the question is, what positional groups and what positions on the Browns roster would possibly be open for this rookie drafted to come in and play? And look, we don't want to hear it on Nick Chubb. And maybe there's some naivete between some folks who, the way they're talking about Nick. Even if Nick came in the weekend after Labor Day and said, I'm good, I'm ready to go, ain't nobody in the Browns locker room will let that guy play right away. Now, if you remember Odell Beckham Jr., remember the year he came back off the ACL, Browns he didn't play in the first 2 weeks, even though we saw him practice all summer long. The reports were good. He looked good. He was doing well. Now, Browns are not pushing this, man. Nick is way too valuable to this team. The last thing the Browns want to do is have seen Nick go through something like this again. So for me, it's not running back one. It's maybe not running back two, because I think there's going to be two guys that do a lot of the work. Nyheim Hines' role, in my opinion, is very, very crystal clear. I think Nyheim Hines is going to be your 2-minute offense running back. I think he's going to play a lot on third down. I think the Browns are hoping that he is a part of the return game. He's not here to threaten anybody, on 1st and 10. I'm not saying he won't be in there on 1st and 10, won't get a touch every now and then, 1st and 10. He is not viewed as, a guy that's going to be playing in RB1 role. Now, Jerome Ford, some of you are down on him. Me personally, I'm not. I thought he did a fantastic job last year, but I am also not ready to say that this team is going to turn Jerome Ford into running back one. Also, the other thing is we need to start thinking about how the Browns do things. The Browns, and with all of their intelligence and everything they do, all the analytics, like I told you years ago, the Browns never wanted to sign Nick Chubb to a contract extension. Nick Chubb played so well, he broke the analytic mold, and the Browns then said, we have to sign him to a contract extension. Now, normally, under an analytic lens, you would have 3 or 4 running backs, and you would use them all. So that way, when one is missing, your 4 is now 3. Whereas last year, when Nick went down, it was a mad scramble after that. Yes, Kareem Hunt did come back and try and change all that. But the point is analytic and understanding the dangers of the running back position is why you usually want to employ numbers, not just one bell cow. Nick was such a beautiful bell cow. They had no choice, and they broke the analytic mold. But you start to get a vision of what the analytic running back room would look like. So, look, I keep telling you, I think running back is very much in play at 54 or 85. I really do. The reason I like it at 54 is I think the Cleveland Browns can draft the best running back in the 2024 NFL draft if they go running back at 54. You want to go get me Trey Benson at 54? We're going to light it up. I'm telling you right now. I will love that pick. You want to wait till 85 and go get a guy like Marshawn Lloyd, who, very similar to Jerome Ford, has versatility in his game and can do a little bit of everything. There's plenty of ways to go here. You could go to day 3. There's the Alabama kid who, played with Tommy Reese this past year. The guy I like, Kendall Milton out of Georgia, is certainly something you can, obviously take care of on day 3 as well. I still think the other position that they should be looking at that can contribute, even though all these rooms are crowded, is defensive tackle. You find one of and there are several defensive tackles in this class that are great athletes and are known for their pass rushing ability. You can teach them to play the run, and you can work on that. The pass rushing ability it's just not something that's really, really learned. It's something you either have or you don't at this point. So I think that is the other spot where the Browns can draft at either 54 and 85. And even though this team is loaded, even though there are not a lot of spots for playing time for a rookie, there is a spot at defensive tackle as well. And, look, people, look, if it means you don't keep Siaki Ika, what did anybody see in 2023 that says, I've got to have Siaki Ika on this team. Oh, wait. If that's the competition and you're saying, well, what are you going to do? Move Ika? Okay, sure. Why not? I'll move Siaki Ika. So with that thought process, Siaki Ika, could be challenged. But look, you're trying to find at 54 and 85, you are trying to find players that can come in here and be contributors. You understand they're not going to be starters, but there can be a role for these guys to play for this team in 2024. And look, you want every one of these guys on this 53-man roster. You want every one of these guys who are going to dress on Sunday, Monday, Thursday, whatever nights Browns play. And you want them to come in and being able to be guys that can get the job done. The Browns can accomplish that at 54 and 85. And my belief is the best route to do that is to draft a running back and a defensive tackle. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody who makes the show their first listen every single day. If you're not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, stand, and subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dawgpound. LGB on ELLB. Let's go Browns.